The Chicago Bulls show some signs of life against the Atlanta Hawks and avoid a longer losing streak. We're going to talk about it. Plus, CobyWhite and Ayo Dosunmu could be moved. Joe Cowley appears to think so. We'll talk about all and more on today's Locked On Bulls.
You are Locked On Bulls, your daily Chicago Bulls podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls, member of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every single day. I'm Haize, host and creator of Chicago Bulls Central and Chicago Bears Central YouTube pages and podcasts. And today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Well, Bulls fans, I kind of battled back and forth on how I wanted to start this episode off. Did I want to start talking about the Joe Cowley article, or did I want to start talking about the Chicago Bulls getting a win over the Atlanta Hawks, which happened over the weekend? I was so excited over this win that I almost went live over the weekend on this channel to discuss it, but I'm not going to lie to y'all. I was tired. I had to do Chicago Bulls Central, and I was tired, but the Bulls did get a win over the Atlanta Hawks. And it was really sparked by a huge fourth quarter comeback by the Bulls. Basically, the exact opposite thing of what happened to the Bulls in their game prior to that on Thursday, in which they lost to the Minnesota Timberwolves, with the Timberwolves scoring 45 points in the fourth quarter of the game. This time, it was the Chicago Bulls taking advantage of a fourth quarter imbalance. They only allowed 15 points in the fourth quarter while they scored 35 points. And it was a fun game to watch by our Chicago Bulls. I'm not going to lie to you. It was a very fun game to watch. And I think that's the part that really kind of just felt different. And it was how the Bulls sparked this run, right? When you look at it, the lineup of Ayo Dosunmu, Dalen Terry, Julian Phillips with CobyWhite out there as well, that lineup really did spark some things. CobyWhite scored 11 points in the fourth quarter of this game. Ayo Dosunmu led the team off the bench in scoring with 19 points. And even Zach LaVine in his return scored 18 points, 14 of those coming in the first half of the game. But in the second half, still he got a big assist that was needed for the Bulls. He had big steal. He had 7 assists as well on the game as well. Him and Josh Giddey tied the team for a high in assist in that game. And overall, the Bulls just did it playing as a team. 8 players scoring in double digits for the Chicago Bulls. They didn't shoot the ball overly effectively from 3, but they didn't shoot the volume of 3 that we're used to seeing from this team either. Only 39 3-pointers taken by the Chicago Bulls. 13 of those going in for 33%. They shot 50% from the field as well. And so there were flashes, right? And that's the thing that this Bulls team is going to do this whole entire season. We're going to see a lot of flashes of goodness. And overall, like, while I don't want to crap on the win, right? I'm very happy that we overall got a dub. That's the most important thing. We got a dub. I'm happy about the dub. Everybody should be happy about the dub. But outside of the win, what the Chicago Bulls did here in this game that was really important, at least in my opinion, was just playing as a team, right? They stepped up defensively when needed. We still weren't great defensively throughout the game. The Atlanta Hawks aren't a great defensive team either. This was always going to be a high-scoring game. But how the Bulls did step up defensively when needed, right? That was fun. But this Chicago Bulls front office cannot keep getting caught up in the mediocrity of these type of wins. The Bulls still have a 19% chance to make the playoffs this year. 19%. And keep in mind, that's with a team like the Milwaukee Bucks and the Philadelphia 76ers being much worse than expected. Extremely worse than expected coming into the season. But of course, you do have teams like the Brooklyn Nets who are playing much better than expected as well. So, things kind of even out when when it's all said and done. So, when it comes down to it, this Bulls team is going to have some really good and fun games, but we're still in the middle. And overall in Chicago Bulls Central today, I talked about the fact that the Bulls have basically rebuilt this team to the middle. And that is the worst thing that you can do, is to trigger a part rebuild, right? I want to be clear here. The Bulls aren't in a full rebuild. They kind of retooled more than rebuild, but they retooled to be right back where we were, and that's middle of the pack. That's where this team is. It's middle of the pack. And so, while there are feel-good wins like this against the Atlanta Hawks, and I'm going to always be excited to see my team win basketball games, you got to still ask yourself, how sustainable is this play, right? And the Bulls being as bad as they are defensively, as inefficient as they are offensively, I don't care about the number of points. They're inefficient offense. Yeah, we play with a great tempo, but we aren't doing. We're towards the bottom of the league in offensive rating. There's only 2 teams below us in offensive rating, despite all the new pace and all those type of things. And so there's still a lot to figure out about this Bulls team and who this Bulls team is. Still a lot to decide over this, and luckily there's still a lot of games left in the season to help determine that. We got we're 9 games into the season now, so there's 10 games in the season, so there's 72 games left on this season. A lot of time left. And so this Bulls team has shown great flashes. And I think when you're looking at also signs of positivity, it's good. Dalen Terry, 14 minutes in this game. Julian Phillips, 14 minutes in this game. Jalen Smith, 17 minutes in this game. Ayo Dosunmu, 31 minutes in this game. CobyWhite, 33 minutes. Josh Giddey, 25 minutes. These are all players that are 24 and younger. So the majority of the Chicago Bulls roster that's playing is under the age of 24. So that's some good sign. You have some building blocks there. But the biggest question is about this Bulls team isn't do you have building blocks? It's the fact that you don't have a piece yet that you can clearly say we can build something meaningful around this player. We can build around. You got pieces that you can build with. You don't necessarily have pieces that you can build around yet. Now, maybe that does develop. We barely see Manas Busilis. Maybe he turns into that guy, right? But it still raises the question on what's really the future of this Bulls team. That's what every win, like it's just. And again, I'm not in the camp of tanking. I'm not in the camp of the Bulls fans that say every win is actually a loss because we should be tanking for Cooper Flag. I'm not at that point either. But I just have to look at things in a reality and say what's sustainable about this, and then even if it is sustainable, what's the ceiling, right? We've been a play-in team for the last few years. One of the worst things that can happen to this team right now is being a team that makes the play-in, but then doesn't and gets eliminated, doesn't make it to the playoffs. Because what are you then gaining? You lost your pick. You haven't really gained anything. And again, this front office is going to look at it and try to sell us on competitiveness. Now, maybe that's something to say, Haize, let's not worry about that yet. Cool. Let's not worry about that yet. But the worry is coming. It's coming. And at some point, you got to get there and be able to evaluate this. So, that's the thing that you got to look for. And we got Dustin here saying, where did the comment go from Dustin? The Bulls need to build around White, Ayo. You can't build around, though. You can build with those guys. As much as I love CobyWhite, I love CobyWhite. CobyWhite is not yet a player that you can build around. That'll lead you to the exact same place you were in building around Zach LaVine. And again, I'm saying this as of yet. Maybe Coby hits another leap and that eliminates that question. But as right now, we got pieces we can build with, not a player that we can build around. And what do you see around the league? When you look at the top of the conferences, when you look at the top of the teams that actually have a chance theoretically to win a title, they have players that you can build around. Cleveland, players you can build around. Now, they have a solid core there as well. That's why I'm not in the mindset of, hey, you just send everybody off until you get your great, because they didn't do that either, right? So I'm not saying, and we'll get into the article from Joe Cowley. So I'm not of the mind that we need to move Coby, we need to move Ayo, all because these aren't players that you build around. Not saying that. But you still need your player that you can build around. And then the players that you can build with help support that player, right? Boston has 2 of those players. New York, they're still a team that right now has a lot of players you can build around. Their depth is really there, but we'll see what gets there, right? The Orlando Magic, when healthy, they have Paolo Banchero, right? You look at the Western Conference, the Phoenix Suns, they got KD, they got Devin Booker. The Oklahoma City Thunder, they got Shea, they got Chet, who went down, prayers up to Shea. The Denver Nuggets, they got Jokic. The Memphis Grizzlies, they got Ja, right? So you need those players that you can build around. You need that. You need that player that you can build around. Now, I would love to see the Chicago Bulls get lucky in this upcoming draft and get a player that they can build around and keep Ayo, keep Coby, keep Julian. And I know some people are going to hate this, but even keep P. Will, because as a player that can give you really good defense as a role player, he's not making that much. I'm not mad at that, right? Now, if you move him, you move him. But I'm just saying that I wouldn't be mad at that. If you can get a truly franchise-altering talent, you want to try to keep these young pieces because Manas Busilis, maybe he turns into that guy, right? But it helps hit the ground running if you have those guys. And so that's what it comes down to. But overall, glad that the Bulls got the win here. Glad that the Bulls were able to really show some of that fight that we need to see from our Chicago Bulls. And then let's hope that we can start, maybe stringing some wins together here, or, whatever you guys view it as. But next up, we're going to be talking about the article from Joe Cowley, in which he mentioned CobyWhite and or Ayo Dosunmu could be moved. And but before we get into that, we got to get a message from one of our sponsors, and that is FanDuel. All right, y'all, get ready to take the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I've been telling you guys, for my bettors out there, being able to get all the information that you need to place an informed bet on the same page where you can place your bet, it just completely streamlines that process. It helps you get your bets in quicker. If you're trying to make that quick bet, if you're trying to make that quick parlay, FanDuel gives you all the tools that you need so you can just be there on one page. You ain't got to go to ESPN. You ain't got to go to Cleaning the Gas. You ain't got to go to NFL.com to get the analytics that you need to make an informed bet. They're giving it to you right there, all within FanDuel. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, my Bulls fans, man, you guys know I want to thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Bulls every single day. I'm recording a little bit earlier today. We may be moving the show up a little bit in the day to kind of catch that morning crowd a little bit more. Let me know how you guys feel about that. Those that are in the chat, those that are watching it after the fact, I'm thinking about moving it up to about as early as 9 a.m. Chicago time to really kind of catch that morning crowd. People have been mentioning that they kind of miss it, and then by the time they get to it, it's after work, and then on game days, they kind of, they just wait to the post-game show. So just a little thing as we keep trying to, mess around with the timing here as we made this a live show. But with that said, I want to get into this article from Joe Cowley. And you guys know, before I talk about anything with Joe Cowley, I want to make sure that I point this out. Take everything that Joe Cowley says with a humongous grain of salt, the biggest grain of salt that you can find. If that mug's the size of a snowball, right? One of them snowballs you just catch somebody with on the side of the head when you had a snowball fight, take it with that grain of salt. And then, you can take that for what you will. But Joe Cowley, it's a little shot at Joe Cowley. But he's been right sometimes. I got to give him credit. He's been right sometimes, right? He's been right sometimes. Every dog has their day. But with that said, man, there's starting to be a little more noise about the Bulls being willing to part with CobyWhite or Ayo Dosunmu. Now, I personally think that's a bad idea. I just want to be clear. I do not think that's the route that you should go. I can understand why, and we'll get into the reasons why that it's mentioned here. But I just think that with Coby and Ayo being on such reasonable deals and still scratching the surface, these are two guys in CobyWhite and Ayo Dosunmu that roles have changed the most every season that they've been in the NBA. CobyWhite, every year that he's been in the NBA, his role has changed. Even last year, after what should have been a most improved player of the year season, CobyWhite's role changed from that to what it is this year, being more off ball, playing, not being the point guard, being the shooting guard now, right? So that's been there. Ayo Dosunmu, same way. He came into this team. He initially made a name for himself on defense, playing, some minutes, not a lot, right? Then Lonzo Ball went down. He stepped into the starting point guard role. He was then the starting point guard the year after that. Didn't really work out as a starting point guard. They brought in Pat Bev. And then he went into that offseason. He got a new contract. And then last season, he was coming off the bench. And then that changed within the season after Zach LaVine went down. And he was no longer the starting point guard, but he was a starting two guard next to CobyWhite as the one, right? So these guys' role has changed every single year. Every single year. And when it comes down to that, I look at that and I say, these are guys that, because of their adaptability, I would love to be able to see stay here in Chicago, right? But then you have the change of mindset. And while I don't agree with it, I'm also going to talk about it because I'm not going to only talk about things I agree with. That's bad podcasting. Podcasters out there, if you can only talk about things you agree with, you're bad at your job. But with that said, Joe Cowley presents this conversation here that the Bulls may be willing to part with Ayo and or Coby if it meant getting and facilitating other deals. Now, that's something that I don't like to hear. I can understand, right? I can understand it. I can understand why that thought process to be there. And specifically, Joe Cowley mentions here that after 30 to 35 games, that this team may switch to being to focusing on keeping their lottery pick. Now, that's something that we're going to talk about here in the last segment of the show. I want to focus here on CobyWhite and Ayo Dosunmu. When you look at Coby and Ayo, right? These guys are two guys on very cost-controlled contracts, extremely cost-controlled contracts. I once called Ayo Dosunmu coming into this season that he was probably, if the Bulls were to make him available in a trade talk, again, not necessarily saying I think they should, but if they do make him available in trade talk, when you look at the combination of youth, contract value, and two-way performance, he could be one of the best value contracts out there in the trade market at only making $7 million this season. You're getting a player that shot last year 40% from three. His three-point shot's starting to wake up now for the Bulls a little bit as well, right? This is a guy who brings such disruptive defense for the Chicago Bulls, right? And so I can understand, even in a down year, this season is starting off kind of disappointing for Ayo Dosunmu. He's still averaging 11 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4 assists on 42% shooting from the field, 21% shooting from three, but that's really increased. He started off the season shooting like 12% from three, so he's getting better, right? And so because of that, Ayo Dosunmu would be one of the best values that you can get out there in the trade market. If you're looking for a guard to come off your bench, Ayo Dosunmu offers great value. And so if the Bulls are truly switching, or if they do switch this mindset to picks, allocation, I can understand that. But the way that I personally look at it is this. You got to ask yourself, what is the percent chance that you find somebody better than Ayo Dosunmu for what you get back for Ayo Dosunmu? That's how I personally look at it. Not every Bulls fan is going to agree with that, right? That's not every Bulls fan that's going to agree with that. But I look at it and I say this, even with Ayo Dosunmu's contract being up at the end of next season, even if you do re-sign him to a deal that's more akin to Patrick Williams, where it's 18 or 19 million per year, what are the chances with how this Bulls front office is drafted that they find a player better than Ayo Dosunmu out in the trade market, or even if they get a draft pick, right? Because keep in mind, at least in my mindset, a team that trades for Ayo Dosunmu is probably a team that's already contenders. They're close to the luxury, or to the second tax apron. That's why they're looking at adding a player like Ayo with the $7 million on his contract. What's the chance that you find a player better than that? That's the question that I, as a GM, I would ask myself. Now, maybe that's why I'm not a GM other than on 2K, but it's a question there. As far as CobyWhite, now CobyWhite's on a really cost-control contract as well, but even CobyWhite is still averaging, over 20 points per game now, right at 20 points per game. And so with Coby's contract also up at the end of next season, what is his contract going to look like? Because CobyWhite, who's making, what is he making? 12 million per year right now? 12 million this season is probably going to be closer to 20 to 25 million dollars. Maybe even more than that. Hell, if Josh Giddey's asking for 30, CobyWhite could very well ask for more than that as well, right? So that's a question that the Bulls have to ask themselves. And so much like, and I think the Bulls have some PTSD here, right? That's my personal opinion. They missed out on striking where the iron was hot on players over the last few years. And so I think some of this comes down to the Bulls don't want to miss out on value again. And that could be why they look to do something like this. But you better make sure that you're getting it right if you do that. That's my personal opinion, because if you see Ayo or Coby go to another team and blossom, a la Larry Markkinen, right? You're then going to be, and then the draft picks that you got back for them end up not working out or not developing because you still got Billy Donovan as your head coach. You better be ready to eat crow every single day and to hear Bulls fans' mouths yet again. Now, I'm not saying that the front office should make their moves solely based off if Bulls fans are going to complain or not. Because listen, if we're being honest, we're a fan base that's going to complain anyway. We're going to complain anyway, right? So that's what you got to ask yourself. And that's the risk that the Bulls play. Now, they don't have to make this decision yet, right? They can focus more so on moving Zach LaVine, moving Nikola Vucevic, and then we can let the CobyWhite and Ayo Dosunmu situations work themselves out next year at the trade deadline when they're expiring contracts. Now, you run the risk again of maybe them having injuries or a down season that could affect their value, but that's another option that the Bulls could run here. So that's something the Bulls got to look at. Again, I don't envy the situation that this Bulls front office is in, but they're in this situation because you failed at so much of your job over the last years. Now you're in a position where you got two young players on cost control contracts that you may have to trade to recoup and help add some young. It's an oxymoron where we are, but it's because of this front office. But let's talk about in the next topic. Before we end the show, we're gonna talk about the Bulls potentially shifting their focus to keeping their top 10 pick. And is that the right move? We're gonna talk about all that, but first we got to get a message from Game Time. All right, fans, thank you guys for tuning in. As always, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. With Game Time Picks, it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Plus, with that said, Game Time also tickets for more than just your sporting events. You can get comedy, theater, anything that you need. If it's a live event, Game Time can help you get your tickets for that live event. Get out the house. Even though it's winter, don't just stay in the house. Get out the house and go do something other than letting the Chicago Bulls team stress you out. Get off the bench and go do something. Plus, now Game Time Picks has a great feature called all-in pricing. When you toggle this feature on, it shows the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. You get panoramic views of your seats in the app as well, so you can see exactly the view that you'll have of the event before you even purchase your ticket. And then even after you purchase your ticket, Game Time has one of the best ticketing customer service policies in the ticketing industry. If you find seats in the same section and seat for less in a different app, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code that's LOCKEDONNBA, LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time. All right, Bulls fans, man, before we get ready to wrap this on up today, man, I want to thank you guys as always, man. The support has been crazy, right? The support has been crazy, but I need a little bit something extra from you guys. If you're a YouTube viewer, go and pull up Locked On Bulls on either Spotify or Apple Podcasts and go ahead and leave us a 5-star review or rating. Since you can't leave review or ratings here on YouTube, go and do that for me. If you're a podcast listener after the fact, go over on YouTube, hit the subscribe button, just search Locked On Bulls, will come right on up. Hit that subscribe button, help other people discover the podcast by either leaving a review or going to subscribe on the YouTube channel. I thank you guys for that. So in this article with Joe Cowley that we talked about, Joe Cowley mentioned that the Bulls, and let me go back to the exact quote because I want to read this directly. Because I read this and I was like, all right, this may be one of the more sensible things that AK and Eversley could potentially do. It says this: in a perfect world, the Bulls' top suit, meaning the front office, wants to showcase as much talent as he can for 30 to 35 games or so before making sure the roster stays at the bottom 10 for the draft lottery, keeping the protected 2025 first-round draft pick out of the Spurs' hands. Now, again, a huge grain of salt, snowball-sized grain of salt. This is a Joe Cowley article. But even with that said, you got to ask yourself, is that the right situation for the Bulls? With Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic having some of their best seasons yet, right, in a while for Zach, Nikola Vucevic, this is his best statistical season of him being in a Chicago Bulls uniform. So if AK has the foresight to say, let me use the first part of the season to showcase these guys, at the trade deadline, I'm moving them. And then after the trade deadline, we go. It's going to be a struggle, but we'll keep that top 10 pick. Now, I know a lot of Bulls fans are going to look at this and say, isn't this tanking though? Kind of, sort of, but not really. I look at tanking as you're trying to be as bad as possible, meaning that you're trading everybody if they can make you bad, kind of a la what the 76ers did. I look at this as saying, yeah, you're trying to take advantage of players while their assets are high, and you're naturally going to get worse by trading two of your best players. Nikola Vucevic has been the best Bull this season. He's been it, right? And so if you are finally focused, and this is one thing that AK has not done in his time here with Chicago, he's had 1 foot in, 1 foot out the whole entire time. But if you are truly now focused on keeping your top 10 protected pick to the San Antonio Spurs, which, by the way, is still top 8 protected in 2026 and 2027, not to say that they Bulls should bottom out for the next 3 years, but this is a different scenario. This is the deepest draft in at least the last 5 years, maybe the last decade. So I'm not mad at a team that needs that piece, a la what we talked about before, to truly build a round. I'm not mad at them trying to maximize their chances to keep that top 10 pick and to go out and get that guy. I'm not mad at it. Now, will the Bulls actually do it? We'll see. We'll see. We will very well see. And ultimately, this front office, in whatever they do, you have to get it right. You cannot keep hovering around the middle. You can't do that. Rebuilding to the middle is not actually rebuilding. It's not, or at least not anything meaningful or sustainable. So you got to try to find that path, and it's up to this Bulls brass to find that path. Can they do it? Let's hope so. But that's my time for today, guys. Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of Locked On Bulls. By the way, go to LockedOnDaily.com and sign up for the all-new Locked On Bulls daily newsletter. Monday through Friday, I'm giving you guys a written newsletter in your inbox to start your day off with all the latest news, thoughts, process. I've been using it to really go high analytical. So if you need that kind of extra kind of source to really get into the analytics of basketball, that's kind of what I'm using it for. So make sure you guys stay tuned in. Sign up for that as well. Thank you guys so much. You mean the world to me. You guys can follow us at Locked On Bulls. You can follow me personally at CEO Haize. And I'll be live tonight after the game. And maybe, just maybe, the Chicago Bulls could be run stoppers or streak stoppers and in the Cleveland Cavaliers 11-0 streak. Stay tuned for that. Love you guys. Go Bulls. See you, Red, y'all. Peace.